All right, so I think we're going to get started. So apparently this is the last session of the day. This happened to me on Monday. It's really difficult to compete with alcohol, so we're going to promise to get you guys out on time and hopefully make it an interesting discussion. And compete with these guys next door.
That was kind of loud.
So thanks for being here today. Excited about the opportunity to talk with you all a little bit about kind of the Foursquare API, the technical aspects of it, and also the trends we're seeing with application development. So my name is Adam Steinberg. I'm one of the co-founders of a company called PlacePunch. Our product is a location-based marketing software platform, software as a service. Basically takes out the technical work out of working with these APIs, enables marketers to run their own campaigns without any technical integration work. So we've basically built our product on the Foursquare API along with Facebook and Twitter. So excited to share some of our learnings from that. My counterpart.
And I'm Chad Elkins. I'm the director of social media at an advertising agency called Engauge. So there I manage all of our solo-mo efforts for our brands. And before that, just more Foursquare qualifications. I spent a couple of years at NASA and worked on the Foursquare campaign that we do the check-in from space.
Solo-mo.
Solo-mo.
Is it emotional or is it solo-mo?
Social mobile location.
Something like that. So just out of curiosity real quick, has anybody built anything on the Foursquare API before ever just messed around with it? Any hands? One? Awesome. What'd you do? Yeah, cool. Excellent. So this is going to be very similar to Facebook if you ever mess around with the Facebook API, but a little bit different obviously in the data. So our goal today is to give you some insights into kind of what Foursquare is if you've never used the product before, give you some insights really then into the API. So what is the API? What data is exposed via the API? What are the formats? How do you get started with it? Then from there, we'll talk a little bit about kind of how other applications are using the API, how they're leveraging the different data points and endpoints, and then we'll also walk through kind of a mini case study. All right, so we'll just do a quick intro into what kind of Foursquare is, why is it popular today. So if you haven't used Foursquare, it's super easy to get started. So Foursquare is basically sharing where you are in real time, what location you're at. So you pull out your phone, open up Foursquare, check in. I think I'm in the right audience. Everyone probably knows what Foursquare is. But for instance, when I got here today, pulled out my phone, checked in at the Geekend conference, and then all my friends in Atlanta and wherever else knew I was here. So it's kind of location-based social networking. Would that be fair?
Fair statement.
Yeah, all right. You're the expert.
I like the color commentary, apparently.
Right. So what's cool, though, is that Foursquare is moving beyond just a check-in. So yes, check-in is great. Check-in, you know where I am. My friends know where I am. But what else can I do with the fact that I've been at all these different places? So one piece they're adding that's been really popular is their tips. Features the fact that it's kind of like Yelp. You can also leave kind of mini reviews. So if I went to a fun place, this is actually I think I got this from Vic's on the River here in Savannah. So people are leaving tips about recommending the fried green tomatoes. So it's almost like mini reviews, tips. There was one place that said, be careful if you buy something for less than $5, you can't use a credit card.
We were at Gallery up the street, the coffee shop, and you'd walked out and complained about the fact that they don't take credit cards under $5, and there happened to be a Foursquare tip telling people under $5 they don't take credit cards.
Right. So awesome coffee. Just make sure you have cash. Something new is the ability to create these curated lists within Foursquare. So if I'm in Savannah and want a list of great places to go eat or great bars to go try, when I'm in Savannah, Foursquare has the ability for users to create these curated lists. So it's almost like, what do you call them, city guides? I mean, Chad, this is one of your lists from Atlanta. Do you want to talk about this one real quick?
Right, so this is this basically list or collection of venues, and you can kind of create these collection of venues around any theme you want. So you guys familiar with the show Walking Dead? It's probably one of the most popular shows on TV right now. Well, that show happened to be filmed in and around Metro Atlanta. And so for fans of the show that might not know where all the different locations are that they're watching on the program, I actually created a Foursquare list telling people what parts of different episodes were filmed at various places around the city. And so someone could actually go and visit these spots and recall what happened in the show at those locations.
Yeah, so very cool stuff. And then finally, something that Foursquare just rolled out pretty recently is their Explorer functionality. So within their app, they're taking the fact that they know where you've been for the past month or 6 months or year. So They know that you like to go out to eat at certain places, when you like to go out, where your friends have been, the things you like to do. So they're leveraging this really powerful data, and through this Explore feature, providing you with personalized, relevant recommendations on places to go visit. So, for instance, if you wanted to find a coffee shop,
which
here
we
in
did.
Savannah, yeah. So we used the Foursquare Explore feature, and it made recommendations to us based on other places we visited, and also if any of our friends had been there. So really cool kind of features built on top of Foursquare. So that's the app. That's just a quick overview on kind of what it can do. Let's get to the geeky stuff. So Foursquare's API, what is it and how do you get started? So they have a developer portal at developer.foursquare.com. Basically, they've built out a huge portal for documentation, tutorials, endpoints, how do you get started with it. It's really straightforward, so the technical part of this, we're not going to get too technical, but there's a couple core concepts to the API. OAuth is core to the Foursquare API, so if you've used Twitter, used Facebook, or used Facebook Connect, the idea that if you want to access someone's user data on Foursquare, they require that you go through an OAuth process, and that person gives you permission to access their data. So OAuth 2 is the standard now. There's plenty of toolkits out there to build on top of that. JSON, so they're moving off of XML over to JSON, pretty standard stuff. And something that's great about this is they're all RESTful APIs, so it's really easy to use. I'm not a computer engineer, but I'm a hacker, and I got started on this in 10 minutes. So go there, check it out. It's really easy. What I'll do now is just talk for a minute about how do you get this data out of Foursquare. So you've got all this great kind of location data. What are some of the things you can actually get out of Foursquare via the API? So the most probably pertinent one is, okay, maybe I'm trying to build an app, trying to use kind of my users' check-in data somehow to make a really cool location-based app. So how do I get check-in history or check-in information for each user out of Foursquare? So how you do that is you use the OAuth process. So you would set up an OAuth token, and someone would kind of go through that process, give you permission to access their check-in data via Foursquare. Super easy. But then what you'll do is basically query that user's endpoint and say, great, Adam just signed up for my app, and he wants to get recommendations based on where he's checked into. So you'll suck that data out of Foursquare. And what you get back is a really standard kind of JSON stream. It's going to show you, for each check-in that person's been to, where did they check in, what was the venue ID, what was the name of the place, and then any other relevant information. So pretty cool stuff, pretty easy to parse out, really easy to get started. So that's how you get check-in data out of Foursquare. A lot of apps I've seen are starting to think about using the Explore capabilities. So how do I build a recommendation engine into my app? And Foursquare has got that out of the box. So if you're thinking about building kind of personalized recommendations, think about Foursquare being an option there. And so it's, again, really easy. So if you wanted to, I want to give someone personalized recommendations for coffee. You feed that kind of to the API. So you say, okay, this person is located in Savannah. This is their lat and long, their latitude and longitude, where they are. And then I want to find coffee locations. And so what Foursquare will return back is, I know it's hard to read, is basically the places they recommend that user visit, and they'll tell you why they recommend that. So it might say that we recommend this venue to that person because 2 of their friends have been there, or we recommend it because they go to Starbucks and this place is like Starbucks. So it's a really easy to use and consume API endpoint for recommendations. So I think it's pretty cool. So again, you don't have to build this stuff. Foursquare has it free out of the box. If you want to get tips for venues, so there's a really cool company in Atlanta called Engauge that's built a lot of their stuff off the Foursquare API. They basically allow you to, and Chad will cover this more, but thank people at different restaurants or venues. You can thank your barista at a coffee shop. But if you wanted to find tips for that place, they could pull in tips for that coffee shop from Foursquare and build richer content from that. And so this is an example of the data stream you can get from Foursquare. Last thing real quick is many apps are trying to build their own venue database today. So we've looked at this. So if you want to build a mobile app and interact with the real world, you're probably going to need a list of all the locations in Savannah or all the businesses in the United States. You can go out there and buy these data sets or databases for a couple $100 or a couple $1,000. Yellow Pages has stuff. Foursquare is trying to eliminate this friction. So what they've done is open up an API where you can access their really rich data set of, how many venues do they have now in their database?
Oh, it's worldwide.
Tens of millions at least.
Tons.
Yeah, so it's all kind of user curated, almost a free yellow pages that you can then use that data to build your own location-specific information in your own app. And so you can kind of query their endpoint and say, okay, I want a list of all the coffee shops in Savannah within 20 miles of this location, and Foursquare will return that back to you. It's free to use, really easy to get started. They're making a big push on this. They're actually working with other vendors to get richer information in there. I think, what are some examples of other vendors using this? So I think like some museums will include content in here and kind of match up data. So
Right, and we'll get into that in a second when we start talking about apps and companies using this stuff.
Yeah, this is kind of the nerdy part. One of the things that's really cool is that Foursquare will push a lot of this data to you in real time, so you don't have to go out there and pull their APIs constantly. When someone checks in, they'll actually push that to your consumer, so you get that real-time check-in data, very quickly. So that's really cool. It was a pain in the past to pull them. You can imagine the problems with that. So this is a really robust API. We've seen a lot of success with it, and it's been really easy to work with. And I'm going to turn it over to Chad.
So the best thing about Foursquare is, versus other applications out there in the marketplace today, is that Foursquare has decided to go above and beyond just being an application. Foursquare is moving now into the concept of becoming a full-on platform. And the best thing about that is other companies build applications on your product, and then other companies obviously are marketing their own product. So kind of how big is the data set today for that? So Foursquare has about 15 million users, and they actually have already crossed over 1 billion check-ins. So as far as volume of data that's out there that you can leverage, it is quite large. So this is an example. Anybody use Untapped in here? Anyone, an Untapped user? Any beer drinkers in here? Craft beer folks? Yeah, there you go. So Untapped is a social network for craft beer drinkers. So what they've done is built an entire niche environment that has gamification elements, the same badges type of concepts that Foursquare has, but they've actually built it on top of the Foursquare API. So they're taking a large base and then crafting out a niche component leveraging that data. So if you look right here, it's the same basic concepts as Foursquare, except instead of venues, you're talking about checking into different beers. I actually use this a lot every time I consume a craft beer. And what I find is because it is a niche community, more people have conversations about it. There are more interactions for every check-in on here that I found than I actually get on Foursquare because it is such a niche and unique community. So what they've done is leverage the API data to add locations. Obviously, beer is consumed at places other than just your house. So instead of going out and finding all those venues and loading them, they allow crowdsourced data through Foursquare to populate that. They also allow people the capability to collapse having to use two applications. So instead of having to go to Untapped, check in on a beer, go to Foursquare, check in at a location, I can actually check in into Foursquare through the Untapped application. And they've actually have layered in location-based game elements and badges that are completely tied to people that only use the Foursquare API within that system. So a very unique way to do it for a gamification niche network on top of the platform. Tasty Delight, I don't know if you guys have this ice cream shop where you guys are at. Tasty Delight has decided to integrate social networking as part of their loyalty program. So they incorporate Twitter and Facebook, but they also incorporate Foursquare. Why? Because Tasty Delight is a retail location out in the real world. So they tie Foursquare check-ins to earning points in their system. And now why do they do that? Well, because on average, about 20% of check-ins are shared to social networks. So by leveraging a program where you encourage people to actually use Foursquare at your location, about 20% of the time they will tweet that out. And again, it's that extra ripple of social marketing that is a benefit of that. And they actually give points to people that do that. Another option you can actually do is tie a Foursquare API action to a real-world object. So then a couple people have done this, a couple really good examples. This here in the top left corner is Granada Pet Company. What they did was they set up a billboard. It's over in Europe, I believe it's in Germany. And they set up a billboard and it had its own Foursquare venue. If a user walked up and checked into that venue, there's a little black box right here. You know what it would do? Dispense dog food. So talk about from a trial sampling perspective, you can actually integrate a mobile application to affect a real-world object. Showtime in New York earlier this year launched their franchise. And so they kind of had the same exact concept. If you walked up and checked into the Showtime billboard there, it was on a storefront, outspit a baseball. Well, some of these baseballs were signed by Hall of Famers, Willie Mays and some other folks. But if you're talking about a great way to try and tie in this mobile versus real-world application, it's one way to do it. Down here in the left-hand corner, this was a private person in New York City over New Year's decided he would unlock his door to his apartment building through the Foursquare API. So in order to get inside his house to go to his New Year's Eve party, he had to check in on Foursquare at his venue. This actually just came out a couple weeks ago. Transformers 3 movie just launched on, I guess, Blu-ray, DVD. And so the production studio decided to build a little mobile game, an application around that. So they could tie, Transformers, as far as a movie, takes place in a real-world environment here on Earth. And so what they decided to do was create a game that leverages real-world locations. And so Foursquare was used to crowdsource the venue data. You could also check into Foursquare through this Transformers app. But what it created was a battle environment that did actually have Transformers taking over real-world spots. So your coffee shop down the street would be invaded by Decepticons. You could go fight them. This is kind of a collection of other examples you may be using here. You guys use GetGlue? Anybody a GetGlue, social TV type of app user? GetGlue has, you can check into Foursquare through GetGlue. Obviously, same thing as kind of the beer community. People consume content in different environments, so actually having those location environments represented is important. A lot of folks use Instagram, Flickr, that kind of stuff in here. I know Katie here is a big Instagram user. So people like to use Instagram for photos. Well, Foursquare has a photo upload component that you can actually add photos to venues. So Instagram decided, we have a huge passionate base that likes to take Instagram photos. Let's actually leverage a pass-through of that for Foursquare venues. And so they allow people using the API to upload that the Instagram photo there to the platform. This is a unique one here. Unfortunately, it's only available right now for New York City residents, but it marries up two different data sets. So you've got a Foursquare data set, and you have another specific data set for a purpose. So the health department in New York has a database of all the different food score ratings for restaurants. And so if you connect your Foursquare account to Don't Eat At, if you check into a venue, if it has a rating score below a certain grade, it will tell you this place failed their last review, don't eat here. It's kind of the whole purpose of that. So it's just something that people found ways to creatively integrate two data sets.
So are there any marketers or agency folks here today? I know we got one, two, maybe a couple. So how are marketers kind of leveraging check-ins within their own campaigns and branded applications to drive business value for their clients? So I wanted to highlight just a couple of quick examples for the marketers out there. There's a couple important things about check-ins for retailers, restaurants, and brands. The first is that all these businesses want check-ins because that means when someone checks in, they're at my store, right? If they're at my store, that probably means they're making a purchase. So check-ins are valuable because it's actually driving real-world revenue for these businesses. And then as well, they want the check-in because that's driving kind of social awareness for that brand. So when someone checks in, they tell all of their hundreds of friends that, hey, I'm at Dunkin' Donuts, perhaps. So a couple of campaign examples that have been built on top of the Foursquare API. One is Dunkin' Donuts launched a President of Dunkin' Nation campaign. So this was kind of a play on the mayorship within Foursquare, so you can be the mayor at some places on Foursquare if you've checked in the most. They wanted to crown kind of a nationwide president of Dunkin' Nation. And so it was really cool. Basically what happened is that they built this campaign on top of Foursquare. If you went to their Facebook page, you could sign up for this campaign, opt into the contest by connecting your Foursquare account. That was the OAuth handshake, if you're familiar with that. So that basically said, okay, Dunkin' Donuts, I give you permission to know when I've checked in at a Dunkin' Donuts location. And the catch was that every time you checked in at a Dunkin' Donuts location, you were entered to win every week a huge prize package from them and then to be featured as President of Dunkin' Nation. So they wanted to kind of engage their loyal audience on Facebook, do some social recognition, and award some prizes for that real world kind of check-in traffic. So that was one example of a really, really creative campaign built on top of that to do kind of a branded experience but drive traffic to their stores. Tanger Outlets is another brand. Tanger has outlet malls across the country. They wanted to drive some seasonal traffic and also to build some social awareness for their brand. And so they launched a really cool campaign, similar concept that they built on top of the APIs. Go sign up for this on their website with the Foursquare API, do the OAuth handshake, give them permission. They would do a couple of things from there. Every time you checked in, you would be entered to win a shopping spree or a trip to Paris. And then additionally, on your third check-in, they would actually email you a voucher for a gift card. So check in 3 times and get a $10 gift card. So that's really cool. It's kind of an integration between Foursquare, tracking check-ins, driving real-world traffic, start emailing out these vouchers, and then looping that back with the point-of-sale system. So check in 3 times, get a voucher, then check in for your 5th time, and you get another $10 voucher. So these are just kind of really easy ways brands, agencies, marketers have built campaigns on top of the Foursquare API and seen real business value by having people go to their stores and check in. So if you're a marketer, think about how you can leverage these APIs in really simple kind of campaign setups. And then secondly, thanks, Chad, something else we're seeing emerge is geofencing. So geofencing has been a concept that's been around for a while. It's been done with mobile phones, GPS before, but we can do this with check-ins now. So if I have the ability, permission to know where my customers are with their check-ins in real time, I know that Adam just checked in Savannah, at a specific place. If he's ever near one of my stores and he's expressed interest in receiving offers from me, wouldn't that be a great time to say, hey, Adam's nearby, let's send him an offer and pull him in and get him to stop by since he's in the neighborhood. So brands are starting to learn how they can use these APIs to get this free check-in data and then really ultimately deliver super timely and relevant offers to their customers when it makes the most sense. It's all about kind of classic marketing, right time, right place, right message, and Foursquare is just taking you that much closer to that idea.
All right, so let's go through a hypothetical case example of how we've kind of talked about a lot of different ways to access the API. We've talked about layering game layers on top of it, explore functionality. So basically, how can we take one example of an entire experience for our user and integrate Foursquare in as many places as possible? All ready? All right. Don't get too excited, y'all. So, I know, you're like, the beers are right outside the door. They'll be there in a second. So here's, let's kind of walk through this. So this is this guy here in the top corner, this terrible stock photo here. This is a guy who is connecting his Foursquare account to a loyalty program. We're going to use the example here that this is a hotel. So most hotels have point systems, these loyalty programs. Let's assume now they have an OAuth into the Foursquare API. So now I connect that to my account. I now make a reservation. So now you know I'm coming to your city, and because I've connected my Foursquare API to it, plus probably the demographic data you're already buying from like an Equifax, you know where I live. So I'm probably coming in through some kind of travel medium. So now you start looking at me to arrive at an airport. As soon as I arrive at an airport, a lot of you guys may have traveled here, what's the first thing you have to try and all of a sudden do? Where's my hotel? So you got to either have the address ready to go, you got to have a printout, something to tell a cab driver or to put in your GPS to go to your car. If you're the hotel as a nice value add feature, couldn't you then just all of a sudden send me a text message that says, here's the hotel address. I get it real time on the fly right when I need it. Why? Because you know I just landed in your city. You know I'm coming to you. So one easy, simple thing to make my travel easier as a hotel company, which is what their entire purpose is. Now I get to the hotel. Checking in at a hotel, I think, is completely irrelevant. No one needs to do that anymore. Why? If I've connected my Foursquare API, you know I'm coming to your hotel because you've married that up to my reservation. So now you know I'm coming, I check into the hotel, and you've matched that up. Now you know I'm there. My reservation is now active. You know I'm in the hotel. Bypass all the front desk nonsense, walk right toward my room. Now I get to my room. What did we talk about earlier with the New Year's Eve party? You have the capability to do real-world actions based off of object API data. So now there's a hotel, let's say it has a separate venue called just my room at Hotel A. That venue, because I've connected my account, you know I've already activated my reservation is active, you know I'm there. When I check into that one general room venue, you could actually unlock that door, same as the person did for the New Year's Eve party. So now I don't have to keep up with a room key anymore. I don't have to worry about NFC, check-ins to get in my door, none of that stuff. I just basically check in on Foursquare, it triggers an unlock on the door for a certain amount of seconds, and I can enter my room. Now I walked in my room. What do you know about me because of my Foursquare data? You know everything I like to do. So if you were to access my Foursquare data, you would see I play golf about once a week. I go to a lot of Braves games. So if your hotel has a golf course, you know I already play golf once a week. Why not have a customized offer waiting on me in my room that says, hey, while you're here, play a round of golf on us. Or if you forgot your clubs, we'll give you free club rental, you just pay for the green fees. So now you're offering me something as a complimentary thing to my stay that is relevant to me. If you had a random thing sitting in my room for a spa or some kind of like nail thing or whatever in the hotel, it would be completely, I wouldn't care anything about it. But if you offer me something, hey, the Braves are in town tonight, free tickets, stop by concierge, and you can actually go to the game. So that's relevant to me, and that's a nice value add from a hotel. So what else do hotels want you to do? When you're visiting a hotel, they would prefer you never even left the hotel. Eat there, go to bars there, hang out at the pool, whatever. Hotels are almost kind of contained cities. So use Foursquare check-in specials, use Foursquare recommendations to encourage me to stay on property. I've had this awesome stay at the hotel. I now get back to the airport and check out. Great time from a CRM perspective to send me a thank you message, or now you actually know what I did there, send me a customized thank you message. Thanks for playing golf, thanks for visiting our restaurant, hope you had a great stay, etc. I'm now back home, the cycle starts all over again. Questions? Did we blow you guys away that much? Or?
Automatic check-in, I guess you can imagine some scenarios where guys coming in, maybe the girl 50 goes to the wrong door, happens to get the unlock, just at the opportune time, walks into the wrong room.
So let's say, for example, you're talking, so the thing is, because the Foursquare API, my Foursquare account is completely attached to my specific venue, to my specific room, because you know my reservation, right? So it would have to be something where, the trigger on the hotel room could be just a 5-second window. So it would be something where I'm not going to probably be checking into the room venue, whatever it is, to get into my room until I'm standing right there. And if some drunk dude walks up to me to try and get in my room while I'm standing there, then I can obviously, take care of business. Yep.
Every force has an equal and opposite reaction. I know a lot of people are concerned with anonymity and stuff like that. What's the security concerns with maybe not this information being broadcasted to everyone, but anybody knowing where you are at any given moment? It's very Orwellian.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think classically that concern has come out of marketers having access to your cell phone and your GPS device. So imagine if you gave some brand permission to know where your cell phone is at all times, and you couldn't turn it off, right? So that's interesting because they can send you offers and things, but it's also kind of scary. The great thing about Foursquare that I really believe in is that it's always permission-based. So you only get that location information when that person checks in. So they have to be willing and able to check in and share that with you. So if I go somewhere, if I go outside and I don't check in, you won't know about that. Additionally, it's these examples we've talked about are all permission-based. And Foursquare has, obviously guidelines about how you can use that data if someone gives you permission to it. So there is a danger of it. There's always a danger when you share any data on the web. But I think it's moving to a permission-based model that's more secure in my mind. So I don't know, Chad.
Yeah, so Foursquare is a little different from, let's say, like a Twitter. So if you create a Twitter account, if it's public, every tweet you send is just out there for anyone to read. So if I have a Foursquare account, you can't see where I check in unless we're friends on Foursquare. It's kind of like saying you can't see, my status updates on Facebook. My account, only set to private unless we're friends there.
Can I add to that
question he
Sure.
had?
Sure.
I just looked at the Foursquare application, and it said that Foursquare has the ability to override my sleep or activate the sleep, deactivate the sleep when they're looking for my information. I mean, that goes back to his question about privacy. If my phone goes to sleep, or I disable my GPS, does Foursquare have the ability to reactivate that stuff?
So I think what you probably saw there is, I think they do have that ability. They just launched a new feature called Radar that basically, they kind of know where you are in the background because it's the new iOS features that came out. And so they want to remind you to check in somewhere if you're at your favorite restaurant, for instance. So trying to encourage kind of more activity with their app. So they're not doing an automatic check-in though, so they're not auto-checking you in. They're not telling their friends automatically where you are. So I don't see that being a public issue, but it's certainly, with any app on your phone, I feel like they could do that, and so we always have to be cautious.
Well, this is the first time I'd ever seen where the app had the ability to deactivate the sleep on my phone.
Like you're looking at, my guess is it's probably the radar feature, which is available on iPhone now, which is trying to drive the recommendations. But again, it's deactivating a sleep, but it's not, your data is being broadcast out to the world. It's basically it's a deactivation to provide you information and recommendations. So it's not, unless you check in somewhere and then tweet it out to, on Twitter, no one's going to know where you're at anyway. So it's just something, it could be possibly the sleep recommend feature on just the app itself on the phone. So if you open it up, it doesn't just collapse on you while you're in mid-check-in. So it could be that as well.
And you can turn that off as well, and we can show you how to do that afterwards if you like.
So my question has to do with Foursquare's, I guess, alternatives to Foursquare and other platforms emerging, whether they be extensions of existing social platforms or the actual mobile platform software. Either the features being, I know obviously with iOS, the latest version of iOS, there's location awareness built into the software itself. So, I mean, you guys obviously seem like champions are very confident in Foursquare's ability to become a de facto platform for this. I mean, do you see other competitors or other possibilities for how some of these features may be realized?
So I think that Foursquare, and we're seeing, Foursquare basically owns location-based check-ins. If you want to build location-based check-ins into a product or app, they're going to be the standard. Facebook is kind of the social graph standard. Foursquare is the location check-in standard. When it comes to kind of the open venues project they're doing, where you can get lists of places nearby you, there are certainly other competitors out there, all kind of focusing on the same goal. Simple Geo is a company that offered some of those capabilities from a paid perspective. They actually were just acquired as well. So there are competitors around venue-specific kind of databases. And then as far as kind of the iOS, so certainly you can get someone's location via their mobile device through SDKs and frameworks, but it's not, I know that you're at this latitude and longitude, so what do you do with that information beyond that? And that's where Foursquare comes in.
So you see it as basically being an indispensable part, or soon to become indispensable. I'm wondering also in terms of just a general adoption, like mainstream adoption. I have friends who use it quite a bit, and then I have friends who don't even know what it does.
Right.
So I'm wondering, do you think it's going to be something that everyone will, eventually utilize in the course of their, daily routine?
Yeah, so we were actually just talking about this on the way down. So Foursquare's at 15 odd million users now. They were at, 1 million 18 months ago. So you see the velocity and the growth there. You see the growth curve. So it feels very similar to what happened with Twitter a few years ago. So how they just exploded. Now it is a different action. A check-in is a different action. It's kind of more active, more mobile specific. So I think my theory, and Chad, I'd love your thoughts on this, is we'll see kind of 50 to 100 million people eventually checking in. It won't be everyone in the U.S., but it'll be the very kind of mobile, active, kind of younger than 40 type demographics.
Right. It's about 1 in 5 smartphone owners use some form of LBS application. So that's not the full world, right? But then again, if you have a power to actually target someone that's in a certain demographic set, in a certain lifestyle, like I said, 18 to 34, I think is probably something like 60% or 70% of the users, right? And like 60 of it is international. And so, you've got a great way to really target people that are really relevant. Now, obviously, it's not going to be a solo channel for any marketing campaign, but it certainly can be a very powerful one. But I think as far as like the adoption, like you got friends that don't use it. Some friends may have not even heard of it. Like at this point now, I think a lot of people have probably heard of it, just may not have adopted it yet. So when you start talking about, when you start walking down the street and every single storefront has a check-in here sticker because they're running a special, and all of a sudden users just will instinctively just have to start using it because to get these value and loyalty plays from these companies. We're talking about the Dallas-Fort Worth Airport earlier today. You can't walk in the Dallas-Fort Worth Airport anymore, and pretty much every restaurant in that entire airport has a check-in special. So if they start advertising that in traditional mediums for people walking by, check in here for a deal on Foursquare, people will start asking, well, what's Foursquare? If you think about when Groupon first came out, people were, hey, I just got this Groupon deal. People were probably asking, tell us Groupon, right? And so the next thing you know, everyone's getting on it, because it does provide value. So the check-in in and of itself is no longer valuable. Right? The check-in wave kind of happened 2 years ago. You had check-in aggregators, places where I could check in to 10 different LBS applications with one click, right? So, but now, none of them really had super unique experiences. It was just the art of checking in. Now we've kind of passed that for most people, and people are using these applications for a different function. And so for Foursquare, they've done a lot more to try and build this exploration feature, make it more robust. Gowalla is trying to do a lot more with developing city recommendations on best spots to go. So we're kind of moving beyond that, and moving beyond that means you're going to open it up to having real value to people who just don't like the gimmicky check-in.
So I'll do a quick personal story. So I started using Foursquare, gosh, I don't know, whenever it was. My wife, always whenever I download these new apps, my wife's like, Adam, you're such a nerd, you're a geek. What are you doing here? But then we went out to our favorite restaurant, and I checked in, and I got a free drink. So what did she do? Went home and downloaded Foursquare. So that's kind of the adoption you see.
You showed a slide there with the Tanger outlets and Dunkin' Donuts. What are the hard metrics behind how many people came to it, how many people are using it? I mean, I've seen the apps, kind of cool, but what is the adoption rate? What are the metrics that sit behind it?
On those individual campaigns, or just
Yeah.
those
Yeah,
campaigns?
I don't know if
Yeah.
they've released official numbers, to be honest, but I know they've claimed they had positive results. So I think that's kind of the next step in the evolution of this market and this application is what is the real kind of ROI impact, and I know Chad's doing some stuff around that as well.
Right. So there was there's not a whole. I mean, there's certainly we've done some things at the agency where we just can't release the data. And I was like his Dunkin' Donuts example. One case study that did come out this year was around a holiday campaign this past December that Radio Shack did. They're actually replicating a whole new campaign this holiday season. What Radio Shack did was they offered a check-in special. I think it was almost the exact check-in special they used for other outlets like Facebook and some email campaigns. So what they did was track Foursquare units per transaction, Foursquare revenue per transaction, and compared that to other discount methods. And what they found was that Foursquare users who checked in and redeemed a Foursquare special spent about 3 times as much as a non-Foursquare user. So why is that? Because it's the demographic set may skew younger, it skews more mobile and tech savvy, and so they're buying things at Radio Shack that might cost more than someone just walking in because they happen to be walking by, they need an adapter, right? So it's a lot of these things are going to start coming out because a lot of people are asking, well, what's the real value of me pushing something to a Foursquare user? Why can't I just run a promotion in email or Facebook?
Well, let's take it more local. What's the success rate? Is there any metric out there that talks about the success rate with local businesses over businesses that aren't using it? Not big national, not startups.
Right.
Those guys.
So there's a great example. You can go online and read about it. It's a restaurant, like a burger-style restaurant called AJ Bombers up in, I think it's Minnesota. They were a very early adopter of check-in specials. Is it Indiana?
Yeah, Indiana.
Okay, I'm somewhere up there.
My wife's
I
from
don't know.
Indiana.
It's about it's above Georgia, so I get lost. So basically, but what they did was they started adopting it early, and they were running not just check in and get 10% off, they actually started doing really unique campaigns around it. And so in trying to leveraging Foursquare's gamification elements. So one of the badges for Foursquare came out. If you checked in that you're on a boat, you got the I'm on a boat badge. So what that local restaurant did was they held a party, changed their venue to like a boat, like a harbor, held a boat party, and people checked in, got the badge, and got really excited about it. And they had a huge party as a result of it. So that drove people into their restaurant only because they were doing this really unique thing and kind of a fun party association that they wouldn't have done had they not used Foursquare. So I think brands can be very, very unique about how they use it. If you claim a venue for your local business, you actually get access to data. So you actually have a dashboard behind the scenes that only you can access as a venue owner. So you can actually track when people are checking into your restaurant. So you're probably going to know just from sales numbers in general, but you can actually monitor Foursquare traffic on top of that. If you took that, married it up to your sales data, and tried to see if there was a consistent correlation between the days I have X number of check-ins, I produce this much revenue. So if you have a lull in check-ins on that day, run a campaign that drives people into your store on a specific day. Maybe it's a Tuesday if you're a restaurant. It's always slow for you. So run something very unique on a Tuesday to get people in the store, and then track that back to revenue numbers, track it back to your check-in numbers, and see if you are driving more check-ins or you're just shifting check-ins around, and see if your transaction volume coincides with that. So it's a lot of it's kind of test and play and kind of see what works for your business at your location on a certain day. But there's a lot of things you can do, even as a local business, without big development budgets and accessing this API, that you can just be creative around the system. You're obviously working within the confines of a system, but how you leverage that, like that boat party, has nothing to do with really the API, has nothing to do with the development time. It's just planning a unique party around an aspect that people are getting excited about.
Sure, go for it.
Basically, you guys are pretty familiar with the Foursquare platform, obviously, and you may be in contact with people at the company itself. What do you think is like the next logical step for them from a strategic standpoint? Do you see them being acquired? Do you see them acquiring other companies? Do you think that they should partner with a payment company or?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the question was, what's kind of next in Foursquare's evolution, what's going to drive them to be more widely adopted? From my perspective, the things we're seeing is that Foursquare, this check-in data is really, the next step is to marry that data so that's not a silo. So how do you marry check-in data so that it's affiliated with like an American Express card, which is doing interesting things. So American Express is taking check-in data. If you link your Foursquare account with your Amex card, if you check in, you can get real money back on your American Express bill. And they're using that data, obviously, to measure how much those customers spend at a particular location. So one key is kind of integrating data, Foursquare across loyalty platforms, other online marketing platforms. That's the big thing I'm seeing from a marketer perspective.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things that Foursquare needs to do. One, just to kind of make the app a little more useful from an exploration standpoint, and that's sentiment analysis. So right now, all their exploration functionality is built around what my friends have done and my behavior. So if just because 5 of my friends check into, let's say it's a pizza place, they may have all 5 went the same day and had a terrible experience, would never go back. Yet if I happened to go to that city and it was nearby, they would say, go visit this pizza place. So I think a couple of companies tried to do that. One recently was called Busy. They had the whole checkout functionality, which was basically adding sentiment analysis to your experience. So Foursquare will need to layer that piece in. They've just recently layered in event functionality. And so if you think about if I need to go to a place and I check into a venue that has something going on, now I can tap into that next layer. So I think partnering with like a Ticketmaster or something where they actually start trying to marry that up, and I can actually access it and see where my friends are at the show. And I think there's lots of different value-added things that can happen by being partners with these other companies. Obviously, the movie industry and stuff is a big thing as well, and they've already done the whole daily deal integration. So instead of Foursquare trying to compete with a Groupon or a Living Social, they've just actually integrated those into their platform. So if I'm near a location that's running a Groupon deal, I would get an alert message that says, hey, you're nearby this one Groupon offer, why don't you go check them out and redeem it right there on the fly on the phone. So there's probably different, I think a lot of it may not be acquiring other LBS companies. I think they've actually got that down pretty well. There's probably components they may acquire based on different strategic directions, but I think a lot of it's going to be partnering with companies that make sense from a where am I, what am I doing right now perspective. And I think that's the piece that they're going to layer in.
Yeah, just one other comment. Foursquare has raised a boatload of money, and they are in it to go big. So I don't see them selling out to Google or Facebook. They had that chance and passed it up. So I don't see them selling out anytime soon. And really, I think their growth will be tied very closely to smartphone usage. So all of us here, we're geeks, so we've had smartphones for a long time. A lot of people now are just buying their first smartphones this year. And so smartphone growth is obviously very correlated with people willing to try apps, mobile apps like Foursquare. So I think this will just continue to grow as more people get used to the idea of checking in.
What is their fundraising? Are they doing venture capital, or do they have like an all-inclusive?
They have some revenue models, but they're heavily VC funded.
Yeah. So they're not right now monetizing with ads. They're just focused on where Facebook did. They raised a bunch of money and trying to get as many people using the product as possible. Oh gosh, I don't know.
Your company, sorry.
What's up with Yelp? I mean, they had like a check-in capability on their app, and I never used that, and I never want to use that. But their reviews, I rely on when I'm traveling to a different city. I look at those reviews and I'm not going to a restaurant. You're talking about different dovetailing of stuff. Why, I know Foursquare has notes and tips and things like that. Is there any sort of way or something where you see reviews being an equal part or reviews going away and stuff like that?
No, I mean, people love Yelp. I mean, I haven't accessed Yelp, for reviews. I mean, so if you think about it, it's kind of like, why did Yelp not take off in this location-based space like a Foursquare did? I mean, it's just like saying, why didn't Savvy Shopper take off instead of a Groupon? Like, why didn't, from a social check-in perspective, why didn't IMDb or like a Blockbuster or Netflix dominate that? Why is Get Glue, kicking everybody's butt? So Yelp reviews are key. I think the Foursquare tip functionality has a lot of improvement. Like if I left, the problem I see a lot of tips at locations, they are very time sensitive. There's no way to vote those up or down. So if a tip was popular a year ago, doesn't mean it's popular now. And so if a venue gets a lot of tips, then it's kind of a hard task trying to read through all that to find the one that's really relevant to you. So I think whether or not they partner with, I doubt Yelp and Foursquare are going to marry, but certainly I think tips are going to eventually lead to more review things. And in some cases, people use it for that. And sometimes people use it for just pure information. Again, like the Walking Dead location thing, that the list I built for that, just pure information. It's just kind of fun. We happen to be at that gallery coffee shop next to, I don't know what the name of the square is, something with a T. And we were walking by and I checked in the square and I saw that a Visit Savannah Tourism had left a tip there about Forrest Gump being filmed on the bench in that square. And I was like, oh, that's great. Like, am I going to buy something out of it because of that? No, but it does make me have a positive association with Visit Savannah, and I would follow their tips at other places. And when I come back, I may actually leverage their website and their tools to do something here. And so that's the revenue component. Foursquare is a branded experience, exposure standpoint, and then I would actually do a transaction with them somewhere else.
So I think kind of related to that question, like in terms of their revenue.
So just to break in this last question. So I think you're the only one. Make it a good one.
No pressure.
I'll do my best. So in terms of the revenue model, which I guess is sort of related to the last question, or your answer to the last question. So at this point, like their partnerships or the traffic that they're driving to deals or to transactions at these locales, are they taking a piece? Or are they just at this point they're just are they referring customers or just driving?
Right. Yeah, so the question is, does Foursquare make any money off of these deals they're offering in their platform? The answer is no right now. The key reason they're doing that today is that they're not charging any business to offer a special via their platform because, again, that's correlated with user growth. So the more businesses that offer deals, the more people will want to use the Foursquare app. So it's free right now. Certainly that's prime, kind of advertising network space in the future. So I would imagine that's where they'll look to monetize at some point, but they aren't today. They are making money off of, like the Groupon integration they're doing where they're offering Groupons at certain venues. I'm sure they're getting affiliate fees from that.
And branded badges and things of that nature. So if Radio Shack running a promo, for a unique badge for their business, it probably has a revenue piece associated to it. But as far as like from an end user perspective, I think for them to get to a point where they're going to actually start charging businesses, they're probably never going to. I wouldn't say they're probably never going to charge a user to use the application. That would probably be just cause immediate drop off. But from a local business perspective, if the data platform were to get so robust that as a business owner, and there are so many people checking in that I can't run my business without knowing that information, that's when you could actually make a turnkey approach to say, we're actually going to charge you $5 a month to access that info, or to run a deal in there. Right now, it's just all about user acquisition, which is why they're VC funded, because they don't have to worry about revenue at this point. But once you build it and everyone's there, then you can actually start trying to find ways to not upset people, yet still keep the excitement going.
So we won't keep you all from your beers any longer. Thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Thanks, guys.